Alright, so welcome to part 2 of my review for Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. Now, obviously we left off with them leaving the wedding, and so it goes on, and it basically follows the book from there for a little while. They go to a little cafe or whatever, they're attacked by two Death Eaters, they erase their memories, and then they move on. Now, if I recall correctly, they head off to Grimmauld Place, in which they see the dust thingy. I really don't remember if they gave it a name or anything. This thing was just very bland. It didn't really follow the book at all. They get in the place, there's a long hallway, which I don't remember in the fifth movie or whatever. And then at the end of the hallway it pops up, it looks like Dumbledore. I always thought it was supposed to look like Mad-Eye. I don't remember. It rushes at them, explodes, and that's it. Then Harry has another random dream, Voldemort chasing after whoever, and then while they're looking for stuff, I think it was around that I found the RAB thing, and then they look for the locket finally, and instead of calling Creature though, they find out that Creature was actually spying on them. Kind of an irritating thing, but whatever. But they eventually talk to Creature. They send him off to get Mundungus, and well, annoyingly, they never showed Remus here. Again, the book, Remus comes and Harry eventually just calls him a coward and sends him off. They never had that. I was actually, waiting for it to happen. I'm like, okay, this is where it's supposed to happen, but it never does. Kind of sad. Oh well. So they eventually capture. Well, I'm not sure if Dobby ever came with Creature, but in the movie he did. Creature popped in with Mundungus, and Dobby was on the guy's foot. And this is where they kind of add in some crappy humor again. But they eventually talk to Mundungus. They find out that Dolores is the one that has the locket. And from there, the next minute or so, I mean, they skip the whole fact that they planned this thing out. If you watch the movie alone, then you will think that they just decide, all right, let's go steal it right now. And they seriously, they head off, they knock out the three people, they change into them, and they go right into the Ministry. Kind of irritating. Not to mention, with the Ministry, they were supposed to use the little token things and everything. Like, I want to say they did that in the fifth movie. Pretty sure they did. And this one, they try to add a little bit of humor again by everyone goes into a restroom and they stand on top of a toilet. When they flush it, it flushes them down, and I guess that's somehow using the Flu Network. It was stupid, and it was just supposed to add some crap humor. No pun intended. It was just meh. But other than that, they get in the Ministry and they go off to get the locket. Now, granted, the Ministry part wasn't too bad. My favorite part was definitely when they get into the room where Dolores is in, because there's I'm not even sure what the thing was. Again, if you watch the movie, you'll let me know. It's just like this huge thing. There's like a bit of like the white vapor or whatever that you get from Patronus is like going up the ceiling, and then there's just a huge like force field keeping a bunch of Dementors at bay. It was kind of cool, but sadly, this is another part that they kind of screwed up. So Harry goes in and he tosses out those decoy detonators, or maybe it was the instant smoke. I think it was the decoy thing. These were actually kind of cool because he tosses one and they just kind of multiply, and then they just make a huge distraction. It's pretty cool looking. And you can see Mad-Eye's eye in the door. I'm amazed that they even tossed that in. But the part they screwed up was the getting the locket part. Again, in the book, they do it very secretly because they're still, they still have the Polyjuice Potion working, and they knock Dolores and everyone out. There's only a couple people in the room from what I remember in the book, and they knock her out. They make a copy of the necklace, and so she's still got one on. It's just fake. And then they and then they leave. In the movie, Dolores is questioning that woman about how she's not really a witch, blah blah blah, and then Harry, as the because he's still got the Polyjuice potion on him, so he looks like a different guy. He gets his wand, like it actually looks kind of cool. It comes out of his sleeve and into his hand, like it's, I can't even think of the word, but it's pretty cool looking. And Dolores looks at him and she's like, "What are you doing?" And you see his face slowly turning back. And he's like, "Dolores, you're lying. You should know. You shouldn't tell lies." And then they do the whole, stunning everybody thing. And annoyingly, Harry turns back into himself, right in the room with the Dementors. And that's just irritating because then there's a huge chase throughout the Ministry, and it wasn't like that. It was, what happened was Harry stole Mad Eye's eye in the book, and that's how they figured out that somebody was there. And so they start chasing them down because they know somebody is infiltrated. But in this, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are all themselves, and there's only like a few people chasing them. I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Oh well. So then they get chased by, I think it was Yaxley, Hermione said, and they eventually apparate to one place, or they apparate to Grimmauld Place, and then they go right to the forest. You don't even see Grimmauld Place, you just see it apparating. They arrive at a forest, and Ron gets splinched, which is terrible looking. And then they do the whole locket thing, is making them crazy, and I was not a big fan of it. It just seemed like kind of bad acting at this point. I don't know, there's just some parts that are just poor acting, really. But oh well. So they're moving around, they're trying their best to keep safe and everything. And they actually did this that I'm shocked by, but this was just a kind of a small detail or not a small detail, they actually kind of pushed this out there, but, since they're constantly on the move, even though they're giving Harry Hermione's giving Harry a haircut, they don't shave or anything, because, they're constantly on the move. I kind of found that an interesting detail, but at the same time, it seemed like a detail they're trying to be like, hey, look, they're not shaving, so obviously it shows that they're, moving around constantly. That was kind of cool. The one thing I was sad to see was that this was something that they shouldn't have done. This is one of those very few scenes that I'm annoyed by. They showed a scene where Hermione is like listening, because remember they have these spells around them so no one can see or hear them, and there's a group of snatchers that come by, and one of them like starts sniffing there because he can smell Hermione's perfume or whatever, and he obviously can't see her, and then they just move on. That never happened in the book. In the book, you do get to see, Tonks's father, and the Goblin, and I think Dean, and one other person, or another Goblin. That's right, 2 goblins, and then 2 humans, and Harry, Ron, and Hermione were all listening in on it, but they never showed them. It's kind of disappointed because they do talk about more what's happening in the world. Because remember, we don't really know what's going on in the world. Although Ron is constantly listening to the radio, because they do this scene where it's like 5 minutes long of just this guy saying names, which obviously is just because he's like, oh, remember these people, and they're all the people that have died and been killed and whatnot. It's kind of irritating because it's just trying to say, hey, there's a lot of people dying. It's like, we know that much, come on. But oh well. So eventually we get to the point where you see that Ron's going, he's being paranoid beyond belief, because they show him he's got locked, he's got huge, he's got huge, I don't know, he's got those huge bags under his eyes are red beyond belief, and he eventually goes crazy, really. And he's basically just saying, oh, you don't know what it's like, you don't have family, the whole blah 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 crap. So eventually he runs out and apparates away. Kind of boring. I felt like they put too much emphasis on this scene because it was just them moving around, putting spells back up, moving around, putting spells back up. It got kind of dull, but they moved down quickly. So they eventually go to Godric's Hollow, and this part I was actually looking forward to. And it wasn't as bad as they could have made it. It was actually kind of a cool scene. Obviously, Bathilda Bagshot is dead at this point, and she's just got Nagini in her. By the way, Nagini is huge. Like, I remember her in the fourth movie. She looked like a regular snake, maybe a bit bigger. And this one, she is ginormous, like a huge fucking snake. Like, I looked at her, I was just like, oh my god, she's amazingly huge. So, they go to Godric's Hollow. Harry sees his, they get to his parents' grave and everything, then they see Bathilda Backshot. And she's just a creepy old woman. I mean, it was perfect. Because, like, Harry goes in, she's just staring at him. And it's just like, okay, gotta move away from this. But they eventually do, they follow her to her house. Harry goes upstairs with her alone for whatever stupid reason. And they start talking, and they're actually talking in parcel tongue, but Harry doesn't realize it. And then you just see the snake trying to come out of her mouth. But eventually they just do the whole thing where she kind of like falls down, or she kind of like just falls into her clothing, I guess, and then the snake pops out, and there's the fight with the snake, which is kind of cool. And then Hermione eventually apparates them out. Yeah, and then the whole Harry's wand got destroyed. Can't remember what happened after that. I want to say this is the point where remember, Ron's still gone, and so now they're just in the tent, whatever, and Harry's wondering about his wand. Hermione tells him, blah blah blah, and then this gets right to the point of the of Snape's Patronus showing Harry where the sword is, and so Harry goes for the sword, and this part was kind of too long as well. Not to mention we get to see Harry stripped down, not fully, thank God, but I was like, it's ice water, just jump in, goddamn. But he decides to go down to almost nothing. But he jumps in and gets close to the sword. Locket, is freaking out because Locket realizes that the sword can kill it. Locket freaks out, tries to pull up. Ron jumps in, grabs the sword. So most of this is so far decent, sticking to the book. And so when they go for the locket, and this was actually cool. I liked this part, but at the same time they were pushing it. So they open the locket, and I thought from what it seemed like in the book, it seemed like the locket just talked to Ron constantly. But in this, a huge explosion, a huge tornado of blackness, and then it forms into like faces and crap, and it's doing all this weird stuff. It was really cool. And then Ron finally goes in and slashes it. But at the same time, it seemed like too much of a long scene. And then they finally go back to the camp. Hermione, is screaming at him, blah blah blah. And then he tells him about the Deluminator and what it did. And this was a cheesy part too. And then after that, Hermione eventually pops in and says, hey, we need to go visit Xenophilius Lovegood. And at that, I'm going to stop this video. I'll continue the rest of this in part 3 because we're nearing 14-15 minutes. So, yeah, I'll see you guys in the next part.